A hot and lonely wind moved across the empty outpost as Daniel walked slowly through the ruined metal gates. He had been traveling for hours under the burning twin suns, hoping to find water, shade, or anything that could help him continue his journey. The outpost had been abandoned for many years. Rusted walls, broken lights, and silent buildings surrounded him like old ghosts. Still, Daniel kept moving forward. He had no choice. Staying outside in the heat meant death. As he stepped onto the cracked ground, something unusual caught his eye. There, in the center of the dusty courtyard, lay a small figure. At first, Daniel thought it was just old clothes or a broken machine part. But when he walked closer, he felt his chest tighten. It wasn't an object. It was someone. A girl. Daniel stopped for a moment, confused and alert. Why would anyone be here? This place had been empty for decades. Slowly, he approached her. She was lying on her side, almost hidden under a layer of dust. Her dark silver hair was tangled, and her skin had a pale bluish glow. Strange markings ran along her arms, soft, glowing lines that pulsed like little stars trapped under her skin. Daniel kneeled beside her and gently touched her shoulder. Her body was warm, shaking slightly. She was alive, but only barely. "Hey, can you hear me?" Daniel whispered. The girl didn't answer, but her fingers moved weakly. Her breathing was shallow, as if she had been fighting for life for a long time. Daniel looked around quickly. There were no people, no footprints, no signs of recent life. It looked like everyone had left her behind to die. A sudden chill ran down his spine. Something was wrong here. Something was dangerous. Daniel checked her pulse again. It was slow and fading. He sighed deeply. "I can't leave you like this," he said, even though he wasn't sure she could understand. He lifted her gently. She was lighter than he expected, as if her bones were thinner or her body made for a different gravity. As he carried her, the glowing markings on her arms brightened, reacting to his touch. The air around them shimmered with a soft vibration, as if invisible energy had awakened. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. "What are you?" he whispered. But there was no fear in his voice, only curiosity and concern. He moved her inside the outpost's largest building, a once busy trading hall now filled with dust and silence. Daniel placed her on a long metal bench and opened his small travel bag. Inside were simple supplies: water, a cloth, a few medical tools. Nothing advanced. But it would have to do. First, he cleaned the dust from her face. She looked young, maybe in her 20s. Her eyes were closed tightly, lashes shaking like she was having nightmares. Her wounds were not from simple injuries. Some looked like burns, others like electric shocks. And some marks looked fresh, as if someone had hurt her only a few hours ago. Daniel frowned. "Who did this to you?" he whispered. He poured a few droplets of water into her mouth. For a moment, she didn't react. Then suddenly, her lips moved slightly, trying to drink more. That tiny sign of life gave Daniel hope. But the next moment, something unexpected happened. Her eyes opened. They glowed bright, soft violet, filled with fear, confusion, and pain. She stared at Daniel without blinking, as if trying to understand whether he was friend or enemy. "It's okay," Daniel said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you. You were lying outside. I just helped you." The girl tried to speak, but only a broken sound came out, half voice, half breath. She looked around the room quickly, panic rising in her expression. When her gaze fell on the broken door, she pushed herself up suddenly, trying to escape. But her body collapsed again. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy, easy, hey. You're safe. I promise." Her glowing eyes watched him carefully. Slowly, her breathing calmed a little. But she didn't trust him completely, not yet. She had been left alone in the dust, hurt by people she once trusted. How could she believe anyone now? Daniel sat down beside her, keeping his distance. He didn't want her to feel trapped. "If you don't want me here, I'll leave the room. But please let me help first." "You're injured," he said softly. She blinked slowly, her eyes moving from his face to his hands. She seemed to study his calm voice, his gentle behavior, his tired but honest expression. Then she whispered something so soft Daniel almost missed it. "Why? Help. Me? Human." Her voice was weak, trembling. Daniel paused. He didn't have a big, heroic reason. He didn't know her story. He didn't know her danger. He only knew one thing. She needed help, because no one else did. Daniel said quietly. For the first time, something in her expression changed. A flicker of surprise. A flicker of hope, then her eyes closed again, not from fear, but exhaustion. Daniel adjusted a blanket around her and checked her pulse once more. It was stronger now, but as he looked at the glowing markings on her arms, he felt a deep warning inside him. Whoever left her here, whoever hurt her, they could return any time, and Daniel had just stepped into a story far bigger than he understood. A slow and weak. Morning light slipped through the broken windows of the outpost hall. Daniel had barely slept. He kept checking the alien girl every few minutes, making sure she was still breathing. Her glowing markings had faded during the night but pulsed softly now, like a heartbeat under her skin. She was alive. But something about her, something felt dangerous and delicate at the same time. Daniel sat near the metal bench, drinking a little water from his flask. His mind kept replaying her faint words from last night. "Why? Help. Me? Human." Those words stayed with him. Suddenly, he heard a soft movement. Daniel looked up quickly. The girl was awake. She sat up slowly, holding her head with one hand. Her violet eyes were half open, scanning her surroundings with caution. Then her eyes locked on Daniel. He raised both hands a little. "Easy, it's just me." For a moment, she didn't speak. She only stared at him, breathing fast. Ready to run or defend herself, even though her body was still weak. Daniel stood up and walked a little farther away to show he wasn't a threat. "You're safe. No one's here except us." The girl blinked slowly. Then, in a very soft voice, she said, "Where am I?" "Old trading outpost," Daniel replied gently. "I found you outside yesterday. You were almost gone." She lowered her gaze, her expression tightening. "Shame, fear, maybe both." "What's your name?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. It looked like speaking her name wasn't easy for her. Finally, she whispered, "Alira." Daniel nodded. "I'm Daniel." Alira repeated his name quietly, as if testing how it felt on her tongue. Then she looked at him again, something heavy in her eyes. "You shouldn't have helped me," Shur said softly. Daniel frowned. "Why not?" Alira looked down at her glowing markings, long, beautiful lines that slid across her skin like living light. She touched one of them with her fingers, almost afraid of her own body. "These marks, they make me a target. My people fear them. They fear me. When the hunters came, they told everyone to stay away. Anyone who tried to save me," she swallowed hard, "would be punished." Daniel stepped closer, confusion tightening his face. "Punished for helping you." Alira nodded. "But why? What are those marks?" She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to gather strength, then opened them again. "They are not a curse," she whispered. "They are a symbol. A royal one." Daniel blinked. "Royal. My family. My tribe. They are powerful, but also feared. When the markings first appeared on me, the council said I was dangerous. They believed I would bring disaster, so they wanted me taken away before the power inside me awakens." Daniel stared at her. shocked by the calm way she explained her own exile. "Your own people abandoned you?" he asked. "They did more than abandon," Alira said. "They hunted me. They blamed me for storms, for sickness, for anything they could not control. They said I carried a dark omen." She paused, breath unsteady. "Those hunters? They were not strangers. They were my protectors once. They were ordered to remove me." Daniel suddenly understood why her eyes held so much fear. "But why did they hurt you?" he asked quietly. Alira shook her head. "To weaken me, to keep the markings from growing brighter. They thought if I lost strength, the power inside me would stay silent." Daniel's hands curled into fists. "That's cruel." Alira looked at him again, this time with a fragile expression. "I did not expect anyone to stop for me. Everyone ran. Everyone looked away." Her voice cracked slightly. "Until you." Daniel sat beside her slowly, not touching her, but close enough to show he wasn't leaving. "I didn't help you because of your markings," he said firmly. "I helped because you were alone, and scared, and needed someone." Alira's eyes softened. A small, confused smile touched her lips like she wasn't used to kindness, but the moment didn't last long. Suddenly, she grabbed his wrist. Her grip was weak, but urgent. "Daniel, they will come," she whispered. "The hunters. They track my energy. The moment I woke up, they felt it." Daniel felt cold inside. "How much time do we have?" Alira closed her eyes, listening to something only she could sense. After a few seconds, she opened them again, fear shining in the violet glow. "Not long." Daniel exhaled sharply. He stood up, checking his bag and his rusted blaster. "If they're coming," he said, "we need to be ready." Alira stared at him, surprised. "You are not leaving." Daniel shook his head. "I don't leave people behind." Alira's eyes widened softly. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. Not ever. For the first time, she felt something warm inside her chest, feeling she had forgotten long ago. Hope. The suns had fallen long ago, leaving the abandoned outpost dark and silent. A cold wind pushed through the broken doors, carrying dust and the distant sound of metal creaking. Daniel blocked the gaps with old crates, but the outpost still felt too open, too exposed. Alira sat on the metal bench, knees pulled close, her glowing markings dimming and brightening with every breath. She looked calmer now, but her eyes were fixed on the door, as if she could sense something far away. Daniel checked his small blaster again. It wasn't strong enough for a full fight, but he held it anyway. He sat near Alira, keeping his voice low. "Are you sure they'll come tonight?" Alira didn't answer immediately. Her eyes closed, listening not with her ears, but with something deeper. When she opened them again, Daniel's stomach tightened. "They are close," she whispered. "Too close." "How many?" "3, maybe 4. Hunters travel in small groups when tracking someone like me." Daniel swallowed hard. "What do they want?" "To bring you back." Alira shook her head slowly, fear rising in her voice. "No, they were ordered to silence me." Daniel's grip tightened on the blaster. The air suddenly changed. A low hum vibrated through the floor. Daniel stood up instantly. What was that? Alira's markings flared in warning. "They're scanners. They found the outpost." Daniel moved quickly, placing himself between Alira and the entrance. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained. But he stood like a barrier anyway. A sharp metallic click echoed outside. Then another. Footsteps slow, heavy, coordinated. Alira's breath quickened. "Don't fight them. You will die." Daniel kept his eyes on the door. "I'm not running." Before either of them spoke again, the outpost's front door exploded inward. Dust and broken metal flew across the room as three tall figures stepped out of the smoke. Their armor was dark, smooth, and shaped like sharp claws. Their helmets glowed with thin red lights. Scanning everything, hunters. One of them pointed directly at Alira. Their cold, mechanical voice growled. Daniel raised his blaster. The hunters paused, surprised that a human dared to stand against them. "Step aside, human," the lead hunter said. "The marked one is property of the Royal Council." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's not property. She's a person." The hunters moved slightly, their weapons aiming at Daniel. "You interfere again," the lead hunter warned, "and you die." Alira stepped forward weakly. "Please, don't hurt him." The lead hunter turned to her, voice colder than metal. "You should not speak. You should not exist." Daniel fired. The blast hit the hunter's shoulder, barely damaging the armor but enough to make them stumble a step. A split second of silence filled the hall. Then everything exploded into chaos. Two hunters charged at Daniel. He dodged behind a broken pillar, firing again. Sparks burst from their armor as they advanced. Daniel's hands shook, but his aim stayed steady because fear didn't stop him. It sharpened him. Meanwhile, Alira fell to her knees, glowing markings flaring uncontrollably. Weak as she was, her body reacted to the danger. Releasing energy into the air, the lead hunter shouted something in their alien language. "Her energy is rising container." One hunter leaped toward Alira. Daniel saw it and ran out from cover. "No," he yelled. He threw himself between the hunter and Alira, taking the hit directly. The impact threw him across the room, slamming him into a wall. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself back up. Alira screamed. Her markings burst into bright light, shaking the floor. Even the hunters stepped back. "Stop," she cried, voice echoing unnaturally. "Don't hurt him." A wave of glowing energy spread from her skin, pushing dust and debris outward. The hunters activated their shields, struggling against the force. Daniel crawled toward her. "Alira, calm down. You'll hurt yourself." She looked at him with glowing, terrified eyes. "I can't control it." The lead hunter raised a weapon aimed not at Alira, but at Daniel. A final warning. Daniel, from instinct more than logic, stood in front of her again. "If you want her," he said, breathing hard, "you go through me." The hunter hesitated. A human shouldn't be this brave. Human shouldn't be this stubborn. And that hesitation gave Alira enough time. Her energy surged, forming a protective barrier around both of them. The hunters tried pushing through Feld and were thrown back by the shockwave. Dust filled the air. Silence returned. The hunters retreated slowly, forced to withdraw until Alira's energy weakened again. But one thing was clear. They would return, and next time, they wouldn't hesitate. Alira looked at Daniel with tears in her glowing eyes. "You stood for me," she whispered, "even when death stood in front of you." Daniel just nodded, exhausted. "I told you. I don't leave people behind." Alira lowered her head, her voice trembling. Then, "Maybe I am not alone anymore." The night settled again after the hunters disappeared into the darkness, leaving the outpost broken, filled with dust, and trembling with leftover energy from Alira's outburst. Daniel sat against the wall, breathing heavily. Every muscle in his body hurt, but his eyes stayed fixed on Alira. She sat on the floor, glowing markings fading slowly, her body shaking with exhaustion. She looked fragile, but also powerful in a way Daniel could not explain. Silence filled the room until Alira finally whispered, "You should not have stood in front of them." Daniel wiped blood from his lip and forced a small smile. "Well, someone had to." Alira lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. "You don't understand what you did." "What do you mean?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she touched the glowing lines on her arm's lines that looked like carved starlight. Her fingers shook. "When you stood between me and death," she said softly, "something awakened. Something ancient." Daniel frowned. "Awakened? You mean your powers?" Alira shook her head slowly. "Not mine. Something between us." Daniel blinked, confused. "Between us?" She looked up at him, then her violet eyes bright with fear and something else he couldn't identify. "My people have a sacred rule," she continued. "If someone protects a marked one with their own life, a bond forms, a connection of energy, a link that cannot be broken." Daniel felt a cold shiver run through him. "A bond." Alira nodded. "A forbidden bond." Daniel tried to process her words, but they sounded unreal. "So you're saying, when I protected you, something connected us?" "Yes," Alira whispered. "I felt it. When you stood in front of the hunter, the markings reacted. They recognized you, recognized me as what?" Alira's voice almost broke. "As my protector, my chosen protector." Daniel exhaled slowly, surprised but not afraid. "Is that bad?" Alira looked away sharply, pulling her knees close. "For humans, maybe not. But for my people, it means something else." "What?" She hesitated, eyes filling with fear not of him, but of the truth itself. "It means we are bonded in their tradition." Bonded means joined, like a promise. A vow she swallowed hard. "In our culture, this bond is as strong as marriage." Daniel froze. "Marriage?" Alira hugged herself tightly, shaking. "I didn't choose it." "You didn't choose it. But the markings did. They decided. Now the energy between us has tied our fates together." Daniel stared at her for a long moment. She expected him to step back, to reject her, to treat her like the others did, like something dangerous. Cursed, but he didn't move. He didn't run. Instead, he walked closer and sat down beside her, leaving just enough distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. "Alira," he said gently, "I don't know much about your people or your rules. But if a bond formed because I protected you, then it's okay." Alira looked up sharply, eyes wide. "Okay. How can it be okay? You don't understand the danger. The council will not allow it. Their only choice will be to erase me, and anyone tied to me." Daniel didn't flinch. "Then we'll deal with that together." Alira's jaw trembled. "Why don't you fear me?" Daniel met her gaze calmly. "Because I saw who you really are. You were scared, alone, hurt, and you still tried to protect me in the middle of a fight. That tells me everything." Alira blinked quickly, tears forming in her glowing eyes. No one has ever defended me before. No one looked at me with anything other than fear." "Well," Daniel said softly, "maybe they were looking wrong." Alira stared at him, her breath shaking. She couldn't understand him. Humans weren't supposed to be this brave, or this kind. Suddenly, the bond between them pulsed soft, warm, like a heartbeat shared between two souls. Alira felt it. Daniel felt it too. A strange warmth spread from her markings, wrapping gently around him, like invisible threads connecting them. Alira gasped. The bond strengthened. Daniel placed a hand on his chest. "I felt that." "It reacts to how we feel," Alira whispered. "It grows when there is trust, or when danger approaches." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then we'll learn to control it." Alira shook her head. "You are speaking like this bond is simple, like it is normal." She hesitated, voice softening. "But for me, this is everything I was never allowed to have." Daniel looked at her gently. "Then you're not alone anymore." Alira covered her mouth as tears slipped down her cheeks, glowing softly like liquid light. For the first time in her life, someone didn't fear her markings. Someone didn't walk away. Someone didn't see her as a curse. Someone chose her, and that was more dangerous than any hunter in the night. The first light of dawn rose slowly, painting the broken outpost in pale gold. Daniel packed whatever supplies he could find, doled blankets, spare batteries, half-broken tools. Beside him, Alira stood quietly, her glowing markings still dim from exhaustion. She looked fragile, but her eyes were alert, constantly scanning the air as if listening to something beyond human hearing. "We can't stay here," Daniel said, pulling the strap of his bag tight. "They know this place now. The hunters will come back prepared." Alira nodded, but her expression held a shadow of dread. "They won't come alone next time," she whispered. "The council will send soldiers, drones, trackers. They won't risk me escaping again." Daniel looked at her. "Then we move fast." Together, they stepped out of the outpost. The wind was harsh, blowing dust into their faces. The land stretched far into rocky hills and narrow canyons, dangerous terrain, but also the perfect place to disappear. For a while, they walked in silence. Alira's pace was slow, her body still weak. Daniel stayed close, ready to hold her if she stumbled. "You're shaking," he said softly. Alira kept her eyes forward. "My energy is low. The bond protected us last night, but it drained me." Daniel exhaled. "Rest if you need to. We can stop." "No," Alira whispered firmly. "If I rest, they will find us faster." Her eyes glowed faintly, fear hiding behind determination. After almost 2 hours of walking, the roaring sound of engines echoed from behind them. Daniel froze. "Is that—" "Yes," Alira said, trembling. "Drones." A group of dark shapes appeared in the sky fast, mechanical, scanning everything below. Daniel grabbed Alira's hand, pulling her toward a cluster of rocks. "Hurry." They ran, stumbling through the rough terrain. The ground shook slightly as the drones flew overhead, red lights sweeping across the land like hungry eyes searching for prey. Alira pressed a hand against her chest. "They sense the bond. They are following me." Daniel pulled her behind a tall stone wall. "Then we break their line of sight." A sudden explosion hit the rocks above them, sending shards flying. "They found us," Daniel shouted. Alira covered her ears as a high-pitched sound blasted from the drones. It wasn't just noise, it was a disabling frequency meant to weaken her. She collapsed to her knees, crying out in pain. Daniel knelt beside her immediately. "Alira, look at me." She tried, but her eyes shook uncontrollably. They are trying to shut down my energy." Daniel gritted his teeth. Enough was enough. He grabbed a fallen metal rod and broke off a sharp piece. Then he tossed a small reflective shard into the air. The drones instantly redirected their lasers toward the shiny object. A split second of misdirection, just enough. "Move." Daniel yelled as he pulled Alira deeper into the canyon. The drones blasted the reflective decoy, creating a cloud of dust that gave them cover. Daniel ran with Alira in his arms, each step heavy but desperate. Behind them, a mechanical voice boomed across the canyon walls. "Surrender the marked one. You cannot escape." Daniel didn't stop. Alira clung to his shirt weakly. "Daniel, they won't stop chasing us. Then we'll stay ahead of them. But you are risking your life again." For me, Daniel shifted her weight in his arms. "I told you our bond means something to me. I'm not letting them take you." Lyra's breath trembled as a faint glow returned to her markings. "Your words. They make the bond stronger." "Good," Daniel said. "We'll use it." They reached the end of the Canyuna steep cliff, overlooking a massive valley of shimmering blue plants. The valley stretched far, with hidden caves and narrow pathways winding through it, a perfect place to hide. But the cliff was high, too high. Alira looked down, terrified. "We can't jump." Daniel took a deep breath. "Then we climb." Before they could move, 3 drones rose behind them, blocking the only exit. Their red eyes glowed brighter. Alira gasped. "No." Daniel stepped in front of her. His body shook from exhaustion, but he didn't move away. "Alira," he said gently, "trust me." Her markings suddenly flared with warmth. I trust you." The bond pulsed a flash of energy connecting them. The drones scanned the burst, confused for only a second. 1 second was enough. Daniel grabbed Alira's hand and jumped off the cliff. The wind roared around them as they fell toward the glowing valley below. Alira clung to Daniel, her markings shining brighter and brighter, forming a faint protective aura around them. "Don't panic," Daniel whispered. "We're not dying today." Alira's eyes widened as she felt the bond surge again, wrapping them in soft light. They hit the thick plants below with a crash, cushioned by the energy shield Alira's markings produced. Pain shot through Daniel's arm, but both were alive. The drones hovered above the cliff, unable to see them through the glowing valley and dense fog. Alira looked at Daniel with trembling breath. "You jumped." "With me?" Daniel smiled weakly. "Like I said, we're in this together, up deep inside." Both of them knew this was just the beginning of the war they were walking into. The glowing valley stretched endlessly, shimmering like a sea of blue fire under the twilight sky. Daniel and Alira moved slowly through the thick plants, both exhausted after the fall. The air was warmer here, softer but heavy with a strange humming energy. It felt alive, almost watching them. Alira stopped suddenly, breathing hard. Her markings brightened. "They found us." Again, Daniel looked around, gripping his broken blaster. "The drones." "No," Alira whispered, voice trembling. "Something worse." Before Daniel could ask, the ground beneath them vibrated soft at first, then stronger, like something enormous was approaching. A beam of light shot down from the sky. Daniel shielded his eyes. "What is that?" A massive shadow formed above them. A sleek silver craft descended silently, landing in the center of the valley. Its surface was smooth like liquid metal, with royal symbols carved across its wings. Alira froze, her lips parted in shock. "Teethits, the royal vessel." Daniel felt his heart tighten. "Your people." Alira nodded slowly. "Not hunters. Not soldiers." Her voice broke a little. "My mother." The the doors of the vessel opened with a deep, metallic sigh. A group of armored guards stepped out, forming a straight path. Their armor shimmered with soft violet light, different from the hunter's harsh red. They did not raise weapons. Yet at the end of the path, a tall figure emerged. Her steps were slow, powerful, commanding. Her long silver cloak flowed like water behind her. Her violet eyes glowed brighter than Alira's, and her markings complex and elegant moved like living light. Alira fell to her knees instantly. Daniel stood frozen. Unsure what to do, the queen stopped a few feet away from them. Her gaze moved from Alira to Daniel, then back to Alira. "Alira," the queen said softly, but her voice carried royal authority. "You survived." Alira lowered her head. "Mother, I did not mean to break the laws. I did not mean for the bond to form." The queen glanced at Daniel again, her expression unreadable. "Stand, child." Alira obeyed slowly, her body shaking. The queen walked closer and placed her hand on Alira's cheek. "You were hunted, hurt, driven to run like prey." She exhaled deeply. "I am ashamed." Alira's eyes filled with tears. "Mother, it was not your fault. the queen said softly. It was mine. Daniel blinked in surprise. Royal leaders never admitted mistakes. But the queen's voice held real pain. She turned toward Daniel then, her gaze sharp and ancient. You, she said. Daniel stiffened. Yes, you protected my daughter. You risked your life for her. Again and again. Daniel nodded slowly. I wasn't going to leave her. The queen stepped closer until she stood directly in front of him. Her presence was overwhelming, like standing before a storm wrapped in calm air. Tell me, she said, her voice low and steady. Why would a human fight hunters, drones, and death itself for a girl he barely knows? Daniel didn't hesitate because she deserved help. She deserved someone. Silence fell over the valley. Alira looked at Daniel with wide, shimmering eyes. The queen studied him carefully, searching his face for lies. But Daniel had none. Finally, she turned to Alira. The bond has already formed, hasn't it? Alira nodded. Yes. Mother, and you feel it? The queen asked. Alira's voice was a trembling whisper. Yes, and you? The queen asked Daniel without moving her gaze. Daniel placed a hand on his chest. I feel something warm, something real. The queen closed her eyes briefly. When a marked one forms a bond with another being, she said, it is not just tradition. It is destiny. Energy chooses. And the council fears what they cannot control. Alira stepped forward weakly. Mother, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. The queen gently held her daughter's face again. You have nothing to be sorry for. Then she looked at Daniel once more. The council demanded the bond be broken. They wanted you both destroyed. She paused. But I am the queen, and I choose differently, Alira gasped. Daniel's heart pounded. The queen raised her hand. A soft violet aura surrounded Daniel and Alira, merging with their bond. The air hummed like distant thunder. I accept the bond, the queen declared. I recognize it as sacred. And I recognize you, Daniel. As chosen by my daughter, Alira covered her mouth. Tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. Daniel felt the bond surge warm. Steady, powerful. But then the queen's voice lowered, becoming heavy. However, this choice brings danger. The council will not accept it. A war may begin because of this. Daniel took Alira's hand instinctively. We'll face it, he said firmly. Alira squeezed his hand with trembling strength. The queen watched them, her expression softening for the first time. So be it, she whispered. Your destinies are tied now, and nothing in this galaxy will remain the same. The night sky above the valley glowed with thousands of soft, floating light-tiny star plants that rose from the ground like drifting fireflies. Daniel had never seen anything like it. The air felt warm, peaceful, almost sacred. A perfect place for endings, or beginnings. Alira stood beside him, her markings shining more brightly than ever. Her fear from before was gone. Only calm remained, calm, mixed with something soft in her eyes whenever she looked at Daniel. The queen stood a few steps away, surrounded by her royal guards. Their weapons were lowered. Their stance relaxed. For the first time since Daniel met them, no one looked ready to attack. This valley, the queen said quietly, is a sacred place of my people. Only those blessed by the markings may enter, and only those chosen by destiny may bond within it. Daniel glanced at Alira, confused. Bond? Again. Alira blushed slightly, the glow along her cheeks brightening. The earlier connection was the bond beginning, she said softly. It saved us when we fell. It reacted when you protected me. Daniel nodded. So what happens now? Alira took a slow breath. Now. The bond completes. The queen stepped closer, folding her hands behind her back. In our culture, completing the bond is the final step. It is not done by force. It is done by choice. Daniel heard the weight in her voice. Choice, a word Alira had rarely been given in her life. The queen looked at Daniel first. Human, you stand here not as a stranger, but as the one who risked everything for my daughter. If you accept the bond, you become her partner, her shield, and her equal. She turned to Alira. And you, my child. If you accept him not because fate tied you together, but because your heart does. Alira's eyes softened with emotion. Mother? The queen's voice lowered. Once the bond completes, it cannot be undone. Not by counsel. Not by time. Not even by death. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. The bond was more than a promise. It was permanent. Alira stepped closer. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for Daniel's. You don't have to do this, she whispered. You don't owe me anything. Daniel looked into her glowing violet eyes, remembering every moment finding her in the dust, protecting her from hunters, feeling her energy pulse through him. Alira, he said softly, I didn't protect you because I owed you. I protected you because I wanted to. Her breath caught. And if bonding with you means I get to stay by your side, then yes, I accept. Alira held her breath as if her chest couldn't contain the emotion. A single tear slipped down her cheek, glowing beautifully like liquid starlight. I accept too, she whispered. With all of me, the queen raised her hands. At once, the star plants rose higher, forming a dome of shimmering light overhead. The valley lit up like a living sky. A warm wind circled Daniel and Alira, lifting their hair, brushing across their skin. The queen spoke in her ancient language, soft, melodic. Powerful Alira's markings flared. Daniel felt a pulse inside his chest warm, rising, spreading like a heartbeat shared between them. Alira gasped as the light from her markings leaped outward, wrapping around Daniel like gentle ribbons. His body responded on its own, glowing in faint patterns where the energy touched him. He didn't feel fear. He felt. Connected, the queen placed her hands over theirs. Two souls, she said, joined by courage, chosen by fate, strengthened by trust. Alira looked up at Daniel, smiling through tears. Daniel, the bond is completing. He squeezed her hands. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. A burst of light exploded around them, soft, warm, gentle. It washed through the valley, sending ripples across the plants, the air, the sky itself, then everything calmed. Alira leaned her forehead against Daniel's, breathing softly. It's done, she whispered. We are bonded, truly bonded. Daniel felt it to a deep connection inside him, calm and steady. Like Alira's heartbeat lived beside his own. The queen stepped back, her expression filled with a pride Daniel didn't expect. You are now united, she said. Husband and wife in the eyes of our people. Partners in the eyes of fate. Alira's smile grew bright and pure. No one ever saved me. No one ever stayed, until you. Daniel brushed her cheek gently. You're not alone anymore. The queen raised her voice for the guards to hear. Protect the bonded pair. They are under royal protection. The guards bowed. Alira looked at Daniel, hope shining through her tears. This is a new beginning for me. For us, Daniel wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close as they looked up at the glowing alien stars above. A new destiny had begun, together.